We're here talking disputes with the undisputed heavyweight champion of the legal real estate game, Maximilian, on another episode of Ask Prof. Joey C. and Max. Max, disputes. Everyone wants to know when are they going to get sued when they're in real estate transactions? What kind of things are they going to run into? What are a couple of the common, most seen types of disputes that you see between landlords and others?
In real estate, the very first piece of engagement is going to be a contract. If you're buying a house and you've spent a month looking for that house, spend the 15 minutes, the half hour, or the hour that's going to be required to read and understand that contract. Do not assume that whatever's placed in front of you is a good contract. Read every page, read every line. If there's a provision that you don't understand and that you can't figure out after having spent some time on it, contact a lawyer to discuss that provision or discuss it with the other party. The other party, however, is not necessarily a party with your best interest in mind, so I'd prefer to advise people to seek legal counsel if there's a provision in a contract that they don't understand. Eliminate that dispute by understanding the legal document that you're entering into.
All right, so don't take the contract as for face value, because you can avoid the dispute by doing your ahead of time homework.
Very important step.
All right, excellent. What are some other kinds of disputes that after maybe they purchase a property, what else could happen as a landlord or a real estate owner?
Another common dispute that we might see would be an escrow dispute. The seller wants to sell a property and there's a defect of some type or another. Let's say that it's the leaky roof and the buyer wants to buy. And the seller says, I'm going to sell you this property and I'll get to that roof, we'll fix that after closing. That is a recipe for disaster. Any good legal professional representing a buyer in this transaction will require a thorough escrow document to be drafted before that property can be transferred from A to B. Preferably, that leaky roof or any property defect is corrected by the seller prior to closing. If it is not, make sure that you have a good escrow agreement in place. I've seen this on occasion with plumbing issues, with sewer line issues, with roofs. It is always my preference for a buyer to take possession after these are completed, but never allow this to go with an oral agreement. Must be in writing, and there are specific terms that you need to include in an escrow agreement to make it binding and enforceable.
So I'm seeing a common theme. You can head off a dispute by doing it right in the first place, having good counsel, reading the documents, and not trusting or taking oral agreements from another party who is in essence adverse to what you're trying to accomplish.
The worst thing that you can ever have happen is for you to be embroiled in litigation. The costs for all of these services are minor, and when you address these things up front and you pay whatever the cost is up front, you head off the possibility of litigation. Litigation costs are always difficult to quantify, but what's not difficult to quantify is that in any litigation situation, you're going to be giving an attorney a retainer that's going to be equal to 5 or 10 hours of that attorney's hourly rate. So you're talking about a retainer of $1,000, $2,000, $3,000, and what that attorney is going to tell you is that he can't tell you what that final bill is going to be, because litigation is always unpredictable, it is always costly, and in most instances, it's just the lawyer who prevails.
What about working with an agent or real estate agent? What kind of disputes arise as an agent or working with agents in a real estate transaction? There
are enough realtors out there that you need to find a realtor that you trust, that you have confidence in, that you believe is going to be able to fairly and competently represent you. Just like I talked about in a sale contract, you're going to want to read that agency contract that you're entering into. You're going to want to be aware of the fees, and you're going to want to interview your agent to make sure that you feel they're competent and that they have the experience necessary to represent you well.
Excellent. And then dealing with, as a landlord, we deal with a lot of issues that arise, neighbor to neighbor. What kind of things should people look out for when they're dealing with a neighbor dispute that could move into a court battle or a legal battle?
Neighbor disputes are the worst. In these instances, you often have homeowners, and they take these matters very personally. Neighbor disputes can rise into significant legal disputes that have exponentially increasing costs. Whatever you can do to ever satisfy your neighbor dispute-wise, you are wise to do it without getting an attorney involved. Once an attorney gets involved, your costs are exponentially higher. Additionally, in the event that you are mad at your neighbor and you think that you're going to pursue a lawsuit against your neighbor, you need to also be wary of the potential for your neighbor to countersue you. If you bring a frivolous claim against a neighbor because you're not happy about X or you're not happy about Y, and you are unsuccessful in that claim, you have then opened yourself up to a countersuit in something called a dragnetti action, where the prevailing party, if that prevailing party is the defendant, can sue you for triple damages in a matter. And for all of these reasons, I never like to see people come into my office with neighbor disputes. I recommend that they do everything in their power to avoid retaining me to settle that dispute. I have many of these cases in the office now, however, because sometimes those disputes cannot be avoided. They often involve the hiring of experts, an expert surveyor, civil engineers, and all of these things cost real money in addition to your legal costs for your attorney. So please try and settle those neighbor disputes on your own. If you can't, be prepared for significant litigation.
So be a good neighbor. Come knock on the door, say, hey, how can we handle this? And if you can reach an amicable solution that costs hundreds of dollars, that is way better than hiring this guy for countless hours and then them hiring their attorney for countless hours and costs stacking up. Max, I like this. This guy's good. He's a great lawyer and he has phenomenal hair.